Hey Hearties, you're listening to the Hearties Hotline, your connection to Hope Valley, hosted by me, Casey, and my friends Caroline and Cammie. A special thanks goes to our friend Brian Bird for letting us use the music on our show. Without further ado, grab a scone from Abigail's and enjoy. Welcome back, Hearties, to another episode of the Hearties Hotline.
Your connection to Hope Valley.
Thank you very much. And I'm your host today, Casey, and I'm joined by Caroline and Cammie.
Hi,
guys. We are excited to get to talk about something that nobody ever speaks of these days. It's not that spicy, but
it's not a scandal.
I just like to keep things moving, keep the interest going. But we are here to talk about Wynn Calls the Heart, the original movie that Brian Bird shared with us last week. He shared a lot of insight and a lot of scoop about how this movie came to be. So if you are interested in that, please go back and listen to Brian Bird Part 1, and he will share the story and all the trials that went into making this movie, including the fact that the original movie was supposed to be solely on Maggie Grace and Stephen Amell's characters, Aunt Elizabeth and Wynn Delaney.
Right.
So I'm going to leave it at that. And
that's the only precursor we're gonna give.
Yeah, that's the only precursor. If you want to know more, it's a fascinating tale about how just like God just worked everything out for them.
We really cannot explain it better than he can. That's the bottom line. You need to go and hear it from him.
Yes, we can't do his story justice, and I guarantee you will walk away feeling very inspired. So. Yes. All right. So here's the synopsis of Wynn Calls the Heart, the movie. Wynn Calls the Heart is the story of Elizabeth Thatcher, played by Poppy Drayton, a young teacher accustomed to her high society life who receives her first classroom post in a prairie town in the western frontier, led by headstrong coal miner widows Abigail, played by Lori Loughlin, and Frances, played by Jane Smart. She is determined.
Smart.
She's great. She is determined to prove to her family that she is brave enough to live on her own, but struggles with her own fears and doubts. When she discovers her late Aunt Elizabeth's, played by Maggie Grace, Aunt Elizabeth's secret diary, Elizabeth learns she was a pioneer woman herself, a teacher in the frontier who struggled with prairie life and fell in love with a Royal Canadian Mountie, played by Stephen Amell. Inspired by her aunt's hopeful words and unfaltering determination, young Elizabeth decides to embark on her own adventure using the diary as her guide and family friend Edward, another Mountie played by Daniel Lissing, as her support. Based on the Canadian West book series by Jeanette Oke, well-renowned author of over 75 books, most notably Love Comes Softly. That is true. All right, so knowing what we know about the makings of this movie and just knowing that it is different than the series, what were your overall thoughts about it? And let me ask you guys again, just for anybody who hasn't listened to our past episodes, when did you watch the movie? Pre-Wynn Calls the Heart series or after you started watching the series?
Post.
Same.
Post. So we all found the movie after we found the series.
Yeah,
like a couple episodes into watching the series, I saw the movie.
Oh, it was just a couple.
Yeah. Oh, because I watched it from.
I think I think I had finished season 2 and I was into season 3. Yeah.
I was well into season 4.
Oh, wow. So yeah. I sounded before you? Wow.
Well, here's the thing. I was really scared to watch it.
Oh, see, I didn't know anything about it. My husband got it for a birthday or something, or some kind of special occasion. He found it and he gave me the DVD. I knew it was the original story of sorts, but I didn't really know anything about it. So I was like, pop it in, baby. So I didn't know anything about it.
Yeah, no, my best friend had the movie. She loved the movie because she watched it first, and then she watched the series, and then she told me to do it. And I had it for like a month, and I was just so scared to watch it because I love Erin and I love Dan and I love mystery. So I was really nervous. And I was actually pleasantly surprised that I enjoyed it. Just because I knew going into it, I didn't have a lot of expectations going into it.
Okay.
It was a different story. I knew it was different actors. I had heard the Brian Bird story prior to watching the movie. So in my mind, I was already in that place to be okay with the differences and the lack of continuity between the two.
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of my experience. I mean, taking it as a movie and knowing the story behind it and how much trouble they had making it, I was pleased. I was pleased.
Yeah, knowing what they went through, like trying to film it, like makes it like even better. Like I think like watching it now, knowing everything, it was just neat seeing like knowing what happened. I just like that.
Yeah.
I did not know the story behind it. I had no idea what the story behind it was. And so I just watched it and I thought it was sweet and I thought it was cute. I definitely preferred the series, but now hearing that incredibly inspirational story from Brian and going back and watching it again, my husband asked me a very silly question. He said, "Knowing what you know now, do you appreciate the movie better?" I said, "Of course I do." Hello. Of course I do. And so, now I totally understand why they left certain things out that I would have liked to see.
Yes.
Now I completely understand why the movie ended where it did, that kind of thing. So even though I do enjoy the series better, but that's because I think it's ongoing, and it didn't just stop. And I think that they were trying to make the movie into a pilot for the series the way Sign Seal Delivered did. And but then they just had to basically start over on the series. So yeah, I understand a whole lot more, and that helped me enjoy it a lot more. But also giving it a second chance.
Yeah.
Because I was so ingrained with the series and the actors in the series that I was just kind of like, oh, whatever. Even though, I mean, Stephen Amell, there's that. There's that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, there's that. But yeah, watching it now, separating it from the series, knowing that it's just a separate movie, and knowing everything that they went through and everything they sacrificed and how hard they worked, and giving it a second chance and just enjoying it as its own movie. Yeah. I enjoyed it a lot better this time around.
Yeah. And then I will say too, because I had this discussion with my friend, the one that lent me the movie. So for those who aren't aware, Poppy Drayton, so young Elizabeth, because there's two Elizabeths. We have our Elizabeth, the young Elizabeth who goes to Coal Valley. And then there's Aunt Elizabeth, that's played by Maggie Grace, who went on to the frontier many, many years prior. So Poppy is Erin's character.
Yes, Poppy is
Erin's character. And then the other thing too, because there's kind of a continuity thing between the series and the movie, which is in the movie, Poppy's character ends up in Coal Valley and she's escorted by her Mountie friend Edward, whereas in the series, Erin Krakow's character like rolls up into town. Yeah. And she's not escorted by anybody special. So I told my friend, if you want the continuity thing, just pretend that the movie ends at the stagecoach robbery.
There you go.
Yes, yeah.
If you think of it that way, because that's how the series starts, it kind of makes sense. And you kind of have that background of Elizabeth and who she was back in Hamilton and just her character and like, why she's so stubborn and why she's so determined, and like a little bit of that prissiness that kind of explains itself back again in season 2. So that's kind of how I explain it to people when they're like, I don't know. And I'm like, just watch it for what it is.
Yeah, exactly. Just enjoy it for its own singled out movie. Just enjoy it for that story and then start over with season 1, episode 1.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Or go read the When Calls the Heart series books.
That
Because,
too.
Yes.
So another thing, the Aunt Elizabeth story is just the middle of the original movie. So Brian Bird, he was going to make When Calls the Heart based on Wynn and Elizabeth, which are the original characters in the series.
They are the characters of the book.
Right.
The book series, yeah.
And so when they went to film it, they only filmed the middle section. So they didn't have the first part. They didn't have the beginning or the end.
And then they ran out of money.
Yeah.
Which was because the recession hit, which was
Right.
terrible.
Right. So if you fell in love with those characters, I mean, I highly recommend you guys all getting the books for When Calls the Heart. I think there's 4. And then you can get you can find out what happens to Wynn and Elizabeth, because we really don't know. We just know they kind of go on.
Yep.
But we'll get into all that
to greener
later.
pastures.
Yeah, to greener pastures. Colder, greener pastures.
Colder.
Way colder in the Yukon. All right. So let's start off by talking about Poppy Drayton's young Elizabeth. So we know Elizabeth is 22. She's very book smart. She is not interested in romance.
Not at all.
She is not.
I know.
And she has a very wealthy family. She's just finished teacher's college, and she's about to get her assignment for her first teaching position. So what did you...
little spoiler, the in case you didn't hear it, the Thatcher home was filmed in Romania in the palace, the presidential palace.
Yes.
Isn't that what he said?
Mhm.
Yeah.
That, I mean, watching those scenes now, I was like, oh.
I know. I was like,
Yeah. So what did we think of the Thatcher family here? Because thinking about this Thatcher family comparing to the series Thatcher family.
The mother is a lot more hard-nosed.
Yes.
Yeah, she's a lot more deceptive. You know, the mother takes on the kind of takes on a bit of the role of William Thatcher in the series.
Mm-hmm.
that's what I was. Yeah.
William Thatcher in the movie is a lot more like Florence Nightingale's father. Adores her, kind of supports her more than the mother does.
Yes.
And he tells her to go and find out what God has prepared for her. So, I mean, he doesn't want to be separated from her, but he basically tells her to go.
Yeah.
And then
He's not holding her back.
Mommy takes a little bit of advantage of the let's just say the wealthy situation in which they are placed. We'll stop there.
Yeah.
I have to tell you, Dad is played by a British actor named Christopher Villiers. And I have loved that man since before I knew, because he is in the 1980s version of The Scarlet Pimpernel with Anthony Edwards and Jane Seymour. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it is classic. It's beautiful. And it is a fabulous story. And he was always the side character that I liked best. And then he was Sir Kay in First Night, and in the Lancelot story, starring Richard Gere and Sean Connery in the 90s. And so I really, really, really like this guy. And so he popped up on the screen and I went, it's Sir Anthony. Or Lord Anthony. So yeah, that was fun to see. And also, one thing I also realized is, given the situation that filming in Romania was cheaper than filming in Canada, where because the Aunt Elizabeth and Wynn story they filmed in Canada, or was it Canada or was it Utah?
I thought it was Colorado.
I thought it was Colorado.
Okay. So they had to film young Elizabeth, those scenes in Romania, And it occurred to me that the Thatcher family and Edward, they're mostly British actors.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be a whole lot easier to fly British actors to Romania than American and Canadian.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Poppy's British, Daniel Sharman is British, Christopher Villiers is British, so a big chunk of them are British.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I really like the dad in this movie.
I do.
I did too.
Yeah, he's
more
adorable.
so than William in the series. I'm like, oh, the mom and the dad switch places for me.
It's hard. It's hard for me to separate the actor from the character in the series because I love Garwin Sanford, the man who plays the father in the series. I adore him.
Yeah,
I absolutely adore him, and so I was like, "You're being so mean right now." I like the character more.
Yeah, it made me appreciate the dad for sure.
Yes, a lot
more, especially after season 2 and all that.
Yeah.
And then for me, since I watched it between season 4 and season 5, when we came back to season 5, and then we see Daddy Thatcher back, then I was like, oh, you're just
Daddy.
Yeah. Like you're just looking out for your little girl. That's why you're so hard-nosed about stuff.
No, do not get me started on the daddy little girl part. Oh. And yes, that's his princess.
Yes. All right. So well, the other thing we do know about this young Elizabeth is she's afraid of her own shadow, according to Julie.
Was so interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was so interesting, is that she is afraid of her own shadow. How on earth did she have the gumption to even step on that train?
I know. And so, okay, I'm the oldest, so I can't really say. Caroline, you're a triplet, and then Cammie, you're the youngest. So I'm going to ask you guys, because it's not fair if I'm the antagonizer. I'm the oldest. In this movie, Julie Thatcher, the little sister, is the antagonist. Actually, it's funny. Julie and Elizabeth remind me of my girls. Oh, I can see my youngest being like Julie Thatcher and just being like, you think you can go on the prairie? Well, let's see it. I know, I'm serious. Like the shenanigans my girls get into is because my youngest is the one who's like prodding and poking and instigating.
The inciting.
I was the insider, and like technically I'm the youngest by only 3 minutes.
Caroline, dear sweet Caroline.
My brothers would like, you can't hit your sister. So like I would make them want to hit me, and then I would cry and say they hit me, and they would get in trouble. And I was just the little girl, but they caught on really quickly.
What about you, Cammie? Would you have been like a Julie?
That's hard for me to say because my 5 siblings are all boys.
Yeah.
And we're separated by so many years. I just grew up with them going away to college. I mean, the oldest graduated from high school when I think I was 5.
Well, what about the one right before you?
He's 6 years older than I am.
Oh, so that's like,
there's still quite a gap. I will tell you this, though, because I was the youngest and because I was the only girl, I wasn't afraid of my own shadow, but I was afraid.
Mm-hmm.
I was very timid, and I went away to school in Idaho. I went that far. I didn't stay at home, but I came back home, and I never really left. I met my husband here. We've settled very nearby. This move that we're getting ready to do is going to be the first time that I've had a permanent address away from this house, because an apartment doesn't count as a permanent address, I don't think. This is going to be the first time that I'm going to have a permanent address away from this house since I was 7. So, So I have only recently, in the last 5 to 10 years, kind of discovered myself in the truest sense. I've discovered things that I want to do. I've discovered ways that I want to get out and be more independent. And so I feel not robbed, but maybe slightly cheated that I wasn't raised to be more independent. I was raised to be more reliant. And so I would have been the timid Elizabeth that would not have ventured out, but now I would have wanted to go.
Yeah.
But at 22,
Yeah.
I would have been terrified to move away from home.
Yeah. So let's talk about the differences between Elizabeth from the movie and Elizabeth from the series really quickly.
Okay.
So
well, one's British and one's American. I'm sorry. I couldn't help myself.
I was going to say that too, so don't.
Great minds. Fist bump.
So, in thinking of this, not necessarily Elizabeth of today. So Elizabeth season 7. Let's talk about Elizabeth season 1.
Right.
Because Elizabeth season 1 is continuing on to, from the movie in a sense. It's interesting to me just that it makes sense why Elizabeth in the series is just so
stubborn.
Yes.
Yep.
And it's kind of that that younger child complex, like anything you could do, I could do better. And she does that a lot with Jack,
Yep.
And Julie Thatcher is the one that was prodding and poking. And in this series, she's the same way. She's like, oh, you don't think I can handle this? Okay, well, here we go. I'm going to go to the shed. It's fascinating. It's fascinating to just see that tiniest
backstory.
And the backstory.
Yeah, we don't see the backstory in the series. We hear a tiny little piece of it, but we don't see it. And so it really gave a lot of insight into their relationship, into the way why Elizabeth is the way we see her in the series and all that. And yes, it explains her stubbornness because in the movie, Elizabeth at first would have been perfectly happy to take that job at Weston, a very prestigious school right there in Hamilton, still surrounded by her wealth and probably going to still be living at home. And she would not have had a problem with that, and it would have given her independence, not complete independence because she would still be living at home, but it would have given her a taste of being independent because she would have had a job. But then she gets challenged by her sister, and she is so determined to prove herself. She's so determined to not be wrong that she gets herself in the Coal Valley situation, So, yeah.
And I don't think, oh, go ahead, Caroline.
I was saying now, like watching the series, like and seeing Julie and Elizabeth's relationship in the series, it's going to be that much more fun to watch that like relationship, in the next couple of episodes, it's going to be like have that new mind like about their relationship in the movie.
Did you send her to the gardener's cottage?
I was also thinking about this too. I don't think that had Elizabeth stayed in Hamilton and taught at that really rich, fancy school, I don't think she would have become the strong woman that she is now. I don't think she would have been the best teacher that she is now. I think that being outside of her comfort zone and teaching children who have needs really grew her.
Who really need her.
And
they didn't need her at Weston.
No. And she would have been teaching a bunch of like rich, snobby children. And, it's just, it's different. And she would have just been used to that life. And I don't know. I think she would have just been a spoiled adult, honestly.
Yeah. and have an easy life. Like Hope Valley, Coal Valley, like she has to really work for, instead of it having it on a silver plate,
She would have grown up to be Viola.
Yeah.
Maybe a kinder version of Viola, because Viola just irks me so many times, but she would have been a slightly kinder version of her older sister Viola.
Yeah. And I don't think she would have been happy married either, because she is so stubborn, and she is so bookish, and she's so incredibly smart. Like, my goodness, I did not realize like how her intellect blows me. I'm like, wow. And I feel like she would have just
boiled
married
potatoes for poison ivy.
Yeah,
I know.
Like, what?
Whoa.
Right. So yeah, and I think she would have married somebody wealthy, and I don't think she would have been happy, because it comes with the status. She would have had to quit her job. She would have had to be a society woman. It would have been a whole game changer for her had Julie not forced her into the situation.
Indeed.
So thank you, Julie.
Thank you, Julie.
Yes, thank you very much, Julie.
Speaking of Julie Thatcher.
Yes.
Speaking of Julie Thatcher, let's talk about the shenanigans.
My gosh.
This made me laugh so much.
Are you serious? Oh, it made me want to wring her scrawny little neck. I was like, you are so mean. When the mother said your father is too easy on you, I'm like, yeah. Send that girl to her room. You can't come out for a week.
Well, say I draw the line at mice. That was
the mice.
That was over.
You don't draw the line at making someone suffer with poison ivy?
Because I would have done that.
Oh my goodness, you were conniving evil.
Okay, that surprised me though. Elizabeth is so smart. She didn't notice that there was poison ivy in there.
I mean,
here's the thing. Maybe I'm just a suspicious person.
She was focused because the poison ivy was the background. It was the filler.
That's true.
The focus was the orchids.
That's true. But I mean, if you know that your sister has put you into the situation and left you an unseemingly kind note.
So you're blaming,
especially growing up with her,
Elizabeth. You're blaming Elizabeth.
I mean, she should have known better.
Julie making her miserable. Oh, that's fair.
but being with my siblings, I was like, okay, this is not normal. Like, I do not trust you. I won't do it. Like, no. So I kind of agree, Casey. I'm like, she should have known better.
Yeah, she should have known.
I remember a time when my brothers pulled a prank on me with a letter, an email. They typed up an email and made it look like it was from my boyfriend, and made it look like he had gotten mixed up in something and the cops had to be called and all of that. And then I found out it was fake, and I was ticked. I was angry, and I found another email that was spilling my guts to one brother, saying about how I had a crush on this guy and I couldn't stop thinking about him. Like, I didn't write this. Oh, you did. Yes. So yeah, I don't do well with pranks. You know?
Oh, that was me. I never did any pranks that harmed anybody physically.
Me, yeah.
Okay, that's good.
I draw the line at that. But it's stuff like, the sink hose, tying a rubber band over the sink hose when it's off, jumping out of corners.
I did jump out of corners.
throwing fake bugs at, husband,
throwing
brothers.
fake bugs, that's no big deal.
In the middle of the night.
But releasing 10 mice?
Vaseline. Yes, that is not
10 mice
acceptable.
and poison ivy in the room.
Not acceptable.
That is just mean.
Not acceptable. I draw the line at mice and rodents and anything that's small and furry. No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
My brother knew I didn't like birds. I don't like birds.
Oh, no birds. No birds.
And we were at my cousin's house and he let the bird out of the cage, and it was flying in the room, and like I was petrified.
Oh,
So
man.
like, yeah, I was like, you did not do this.
Oh, no.
Right. He got in trouble
No.
by my uncle.
Yes, that's not good. I draw the line of birds too. But nonetheless, Julie basically forces Elizabeth into her own boot camp of sorts in a conniving, manipulative ways. And I found it comically relieving. And I thought I think it was good for Elizabeth to just be like, okay. And she also had that time with the diary, and she was able to kind of be alone and all of that. So in the end, I think it worked out.
I do like that it gave her some experience with frontier life before she got there, because Elizabeth in the series, she had no idea what she was doing from the moment she set foot inside the teacherage.
Yeah.
But Elizabeth in the movie could at least boil potatoes. You know, and she could, and she had lived by herself, and she had slept by herself. You know, we don't know the backstory for the series. We don't know if that was supposed to have happened.
Yeah.
But judging from the way Elizabeth is in the beginning of the series, I highly doubt it. So
Yes. So really fast, another storyline I want to touch on really quickly is the story about Mr. Higgins. And this storyline made so much more sense because it comes back in the series with Mr. Higgins, and he gets in the series, Elizabeth gets fired because Higgins accuses her of harassment or
and the letter
bribery,
comes to light.
The letter and all of that.
Yeah. It doesn't happen until season 4 though.
Right.
So.
And so like I did not know that until after the fact. So going back, so I watched season 4, saw the shenanigans there, and I was like, oh, okay. Then I went back to this series and I was like, oh, this guy is nasty.
He is creepy.
Yeah, really creepy.
Oh my gosh,
he's worse.
To slap him. Yeah.
Oh,
he's worse than the series.
Like he is much worse than the series.
Like harassment.
Yeah, I mean, you could see him undressing her with his eyes. It just it made me feel dirty. I had to, like Brian said in our interview, I had to go take a shower, or at least I wanted to.
Yeah, and he was just
he was oily.
Yeah,
that's I think a good word for him. He was oily. Just ugh.
Yeah, he was.
Now when I go watch when I watch the season now, I'm like, okay, I can handle this Higgins better than movie Higgins. So.
Oh yeah.
And the horror, her horror at his insinuation. I loved that. Poppy did that so well. Just the complete flabbergasted horror. Oh dear. Oh, and she moves back, and how dare you even insinuate that I would do that? Oh, that was a beautiful performance for that moment. Oh,
yeah.
And it made it worse for me because the mother had obviously no idea and went back and bribed him to get her this teaching job at Weston. And I was like, oh lady, if you only knew.
Yeah, I was about to say that.
Mom, do your research, please.
Or at least Julie out him, because I'm sure Julie and Elizabeth talk, right?
Probably. Yeah.
So another interesting thing about this movie is Elizabeth has a thing for Mounties.
I know. Go girlfriend.
I mean, hello, Red Surge. Elizabeth's friend, actually, he's a family friend. His name is Edward Montclair. And one thing I found fascinating about this Mountie is that he was a privileged fear of Elizabeth family friend, and the father thought, or Edward's father thought he was just wasting his life away, and so he basically said, "You're going to boot camp, son."
A perpetual idler is what Elizabeth said to describe him. A perpetual idler. Just idles away his time.
Yeah. And he Julie infers that he is not as fun as he once was.
He's too serious now.
And so, what did you guys think about Edward and Elizabeth, or Edward in general?
He would. I liked him, but like, it's just weird to see Edward and having Jack. You know what I mean? It was just weird for me.
Yeah.
But I liked Edward. I liked his story, but it was just weird watching it now, and knowing about Jack.
Yeah, and I'm really glad they didn't play up the romance between Elizabeth and Edward.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like at the end when he leaves her, there's definitely like a spark there, but it's not like a gaga thing. Like, it's not like she's fawning over him. I feel like
I think she is a little. I think she is a little,
but not like her and Jack though. It's
no.
I feel like when he left her,
teenage romance.
Yeah, I feel like it was more of an admiration that he was a Mountie, because I don't think that she was kind of like, okay, whatever,
right,
about Edward, especially the idler comment. And I think that she gained a respect for him as a person, because she didn't seem to have a respect for him prior.
None.
I think there was that spark there, but I don't think that it might have been like, puppy eyes, but I don't think she had a full on like
in love
infatuation, not like Elizabeth seeing Jack the first time. No one holds a candle.
Well, I mean, we're talking about Jack Thornton here, so we gotta separate it. We gotta separate Jack from Edward. One thing that I did struggle with Edward is the poor guy was trying so hard to hide his British accent, and it would just come out. It would just come out every once in a while. I was just like, oh, you really are doing a great job for most of it, but just a word here and there. I was like, I gotcha. But as far as his performance, I thought that he did a really good job at being very cool-headed. He was a very good, cool-headed, reasonably thinking person, especially because Elizabeth was so emotional almost the entire time that they were together. I mean, she's trying to drag the trunk in heels that are this thick in prairie dirt roads. honey. And I do love that he did Jack's famous line, "May I?" That's kind of Jack's tagline in the first couple of seasons. And Edward says, "May I?" takes off her boot for her, and she's bleeding because of those terrible shoes and walking that far. And he says, "I'll carry you." And there's no other choice. And he was completely calm when he's being pushed face first into the dirt by the outlaws. And when Elizabeth overreacts and says, "Oh, I'm so glad my father sent you to protect me," "You're a teacher, you can count. There were three of them and one of me." And he was being smart. He was being very smart. He used his training, and he protected her. He did. He took that very, very seriously. And taking off his red serge in the pouring rain and wrapping it around her. I mean, that was sweet. Yes, there were so many sweet gestures that if they had been permitted to go on in the movie. If the movie had been more about them,
Yeah.
then it could have gone on and I would have been okay with it.
Mm-hmm.
I did like how he was the rich spoiled boy turned honorable man.
Mm-hmm.
I think he did that very
Yeah.
well, especially when he was sharing his story of nearly drowning in the icy water.
Oh,
Yeah.
I thought he did that really well, and how it was this sudden realization that life is precious and every single breath is
Mm-hmm.
precious. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's a really long answer, but yeah, I really like what he did.
Yeah. Yeah. And what was I gonna say? Oh, I kind of wish that maybe like in a future episode he'd just kind of come by Hope Valley again.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily to woo Elizabeth, but just so we could see where he's at. Maybe he's got a nice wife and children.
Oh wait, so see, I kind of took him for the character that Jack replaced. You want him to be a separate character.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because he leaves and he goes after the bad guys, essentially. We don't know what happens.
Right.
We don't know if he survives all that. But, it's that
Of course he does.
bounty. But he
Does
is
he go to the Northern Territories too?
maybe he
Oh.
goes maybe he runs into Jack, But I
Mhm.
think it'd be kind of fun to have a little cameo.
That would
Edward
be
come by.
interesting. So you're picturing kind of a network of Mounties, not one replacing the other.
Right, yeah.
Okay, because see, that's what I pictured. I pictured Jack replacing Edward.
Yeah, no, I picture them as two separate characters. So
Got
Edward
it.
drops
Me too.
Elizabeth off and then he goes and then Jack comes in. So completely different people.
Okay.
I do too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I think that'd be
Interesting
fun.
perspective.
Yeah.
You hear that, Brian? Yeah.
Yeah, Brian, can you please bring back Edward for us? Thank you.
Please and thank you. Yes.
Please and thank you.
Please and thank you. Okay, so now let's get into the diary.
Yes.
The diary. This diary has been hidden for years and years and years, and we discover Elizabeth finds it in the bookcase.
Mm-hmm.
And we find out that actually the person who found it originally was Julie because she was snooping in her parents' safe. Which, first of all, what were you doing in your parents' safe?
How does she know the combination?
Well,
It's Julie.
It's Julie.
It's Julie. But we discover that this diary is Elizabeth's Aunt Elizabeth, the one she is named after.
Mm-hmm.
And this Aunt Elizabeth is William Thatcher's younger sister. And she goes off onto the prairie. She goes to Pine Springs and she's a teacher. And so this is the story of Wynn and Elizabeth of the original book series by Jeanette Oke, Wynn Calls the Heart.
Yeah.
So let's go into Aunt Elizabeth.
Okay.
We see her and the Undertaker and his daughter Pearlie are bringing her to the teacherage.
Mm-hmm.
What do we think about Aunt Elizabeth, knowing and separating all the Elizabeths, and this is her own character, and we only get a short time with Aunt Elizabeth and Wynn and all of that, which was really sad for me, but we'll go on to that later.
Yeah.
What do we think about this Elizabeth and all the shenanigans she gets into?
I would call her refined.
Mm-hmm.
She was stubborn, but she was stubborn. I hate to say it this way, but she was stubborn in a more elegant manner.
Mm-hmm.
And she seemed slightly more mature.
I was gonna say more mature.
Yeah.
And like more level-headed. Yeah.
Yes.
She handled things a little less emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
But she seemed like she truly could handle the prairie. She seemed like she truly had that strong spirit. She just wasn't trying to prove something.
Yeah.
So
She really gave off a lot of new Elizabeth vibes.
Yes.
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 Like she can be
did.
a Mountie wife, you know.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
She had the strength. She still got into messes, and she still was scared, and she still did stupid things, and I'll talk about that in a minute. You know,
But she handled it with courage, grace, and dignity.
Hey, that's coming up next. But okay, can I just say, who goes outside looking for wolves?
I know.
Who leaves a perfectly safe building to go out and look to see where the wolves are? It's like, come on, honey.
That made me laugh.
Yeah, but you know, that was a nice tie-in with season 1, episode 1.
There were so many
a lot
tie-ins.
of nice tie-ins.
I loved the tie-ins, and that we had the tie-in with the stove. And yeah, there were a lot of great tie-ins.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, I truly believe that she did have the strength, and she was more refined, albeit she was still a rich girl moving to the prairie.
Yeah. Speaking of rich girl on the prairie, she is in her classroom practicing teaching, and she hears a noise.
What is she expecting to teach in these Coal Valley classrooms? She's talking about ratios and proportions. Like, honey, you're gonna be lucky if you get times tables. You know,
Maybe she was practicing for the older students.
There you go.
I don't know how much the older students knew either.
You know, that is interesting because we don't know the backstory of why they needed a teacher, do we?
No.
Okay. Huh. We'll have to go back in the books and find out.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, but you know, I thought it was really cute. I really liked Wynn and Elizabeth's meet cute. I was kind of like, oh, okay, you're cute.
offering to take her to town.
Yep.
And I loved how she said no, and then she looks in the desk. Why did I turn him down? Okay, yes, I accept.
I was like, go. I was like, do it.
Yes. So Wynn comes in, and he's there to pick up Philip, who is the last child there, Philip Delaney, and he says, let's go, son, or something along those lines.
Are you ready to go, son?
Yes. And so he calls this boy son, and Elizabeth has this realization that Philip Delaney, of course, and he
says, Philip's mother and me are glad you're here. Okay. Can I please just say that I totally understand story-wise why these things are said, but why on earth?
Why did he say
Why
that?
on earth would a single man who is obviously attracted to a woman not say, Philip's mother, my sister, and I are so glad that you're here, or my brother's wife is so glad. Why would he call him son when she knows nothing about him?
Right, the relationship.
That was just stupid.
Well, the something that doesn't bother me as much.
Son, yeah,
that one doesn't bother me as much. But when he said, his mother,
his mother, and I, really?
Like, why do you say, like, dude, you're not.
I mean, I assume it's because he's a dumb dude, for lack of better words, because guys don't think sometimes. But
just think how that would look. And obviously you're attracted to this woman, so wouldn't you want to make it very clear that you are not attached?
Yes.
I mean,
yes, or refer to him, just be like, my nephew's so excited to be in your class.
Yeah.
Right.
His mother and I are happy to blah, blah, blah.
Yes. And the other thing is this, a child who obviously loves the teacher that much, Philip never mentions Uncle Wynn.
Yeah.
I mean, we all know children. I
Yeah.
mean, Casey and I have children. I know Caroline has been around several children with babysitting and stuff like that. The first thing they do when they get to school or get to your house or you get there is they run up and share everything with you.
Everything.
Yeah.
And why in the world would this kid not say, hey, guess what Uncle Wynn did with me last night? Or guess what Uncle Wynn taught me last night? So like I said, story-wise and for dramatic effect, totally get it, but it's ridiculous. You know?
Watching it seems like it's forever, doesn't it? It feels like it's forever, but I feel like it wasn't intended to be forever. I feel it was intended to be a couple weeks, and I feel like that mix them up would have happened that first beginning part, and then they would have had all the other things.
I would hope so.
That was kind of what I was thinking, because you can't go on too long. And with Elizabeth being part of the town now, she will eventually hear, like, Philip Delaney's in the hospital.
Right.
So I feel like when I watched this the first time, I was kind of like, did this go on for like months? But I think I want to say
it's hard with young
diary.
Elizabeth. Yeah, it's hard with young Elizabeth and it going back and forth. We don't know exactly how much time passed. I mean, was she writing in the diary twice a day? Was she writing in it every day? We just don't know. And we don't know how much young Elizabeth read in between, so
yes.
Yeah.
And so let's keep talking about Wynn and Elizabeth, because I love them. They're so fun. So Elizabeth is mortified, highly mortified that this married man would take her or would make advances toward her. And she is ignoring him. He's thinking she's playing hard to get. They are crisscrossing wires all over the place. And there is a little carnival. Because they have a carnival for a sick little boy. We'll get into him later, but there's a what do you want to call, like a bachelor's auction?
Yeah.
Well, no, the first item up for bid is a lunch with Miss Thatcher.
Yeah.
There are other things.
Were there other things? I didn't realize.
There were going to be other things that were up for bid, but the first one was a lunch with Miss Thatcher.
Yeah, no, because you know how back in the day they would have those auctions with the single, like with all the women and the men. They did, I think, Little House
absolutely
did this where,
yeah, I believe so.
Ma told Pa, mine is the one with the blue checkered cloth over it, and so he would bid on it, and all the men would know Charles Ingalls,
that's his.
Do not bid against him. So I thought it was that kind of auction. I don't know. Who knows?
No.
Regardless of what kind of auction it was. There's this auction, and it's a auction for dear sweet teacher Elizabeth's heart. And I was really surprised at the amount of money spent.
$15.
Yeah, that's a lot.
That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
So I looked it up, and it is $381. $15 back in 1880, because that's around when Aunt Elizabeth is on the prairie. $381 is what Wynn spent, according to our currency, to take her to lunch.
One expensive date.
I mean, and then Lydia Delaney says, on a Mountie salary, so he probably, I don't know how much they made back then, but he's probably spending a good amount, a big chunk of his money right here.
Yes. And also too, in Elizabeth's mind, he's a married man.
Yes.
And she drops that teacup so fast.
Yeah, that was funny.
Oh.
And can we just talk about the confrontation?
Oh, yes. I was going to get to that next. Oh my God. Okay, so we have already met Lydia Delaney, Philip's mother. She's very kind.
Oh, that's the other thing. She just says, I'm Lydia Delaney, Philip's mama. Oh, you're all Philip and Wynn can talk about. And then once again, mention something. You're all my brother-in-law can talk about, or blah, blah, blah.
That one is a little more forgivable.
No,
Because,
that's totally forgiving.
Yeah, that's totally forgivable because, I mean, I usually refer to my brother by his first name if I'm talking to people.
Right.
Who know him, Right.
Yeah. It just.
But yeah. But I mean,
no, that one is totally forgivable.
Yeah.
I just wanted her to say it.
Yes. Like, come on. Just one more word. Just one more.
Yeah. Just a little like, oh yeah, my brother. Yeah.
So let's go to the confrontation. Elizabeth, so Wynn has spent a ton of money to take her out. It is not proper for a married man to be taking out a single teacher on a lunch date. And she writes in her diary.
Lydia's face is utter shock during that auction.
During the auction, yes. And Elizabeth is going to do the right thing, and she is going to let his wife know. She's gonna let her know. And so Elizabeth goes, and they're having a little quilting bee or whatever. And she pulls Lydia aside, and in the only way Elizabeth knows how, in a very refined and dignified and very proper manner, using a lot of big words, basically tells Lydia, listen, your husband is cheating on you with me. But I didn't do anything. I promise. I didn't make any advances towards him. And calls him a womanizer.
Womanizing swine.
Swine.
Womanizing swine. I mean, that's low.
That's very low.
That's very low for 1880. I mean, that's almost swearing.
And Lydia is not just mortified, but she is livid that Elizabeth would accuse her husband of taking advantage of her. And we come to find out Lydia's husband is actually in the hospital recovering from an accident. Which means that Wynn is not her husband.
And the instant change just made me laugh so hard. Lydia goes from livid to laughing her head off, and then trying so hard to be gracious. Miss Thatcher, let me get you something to drink. Please come sit down. And Wynn's trying not to laugh too.
Yeah, that made me laugh.
Philip's father, uncle. I was just laughing.
So funny. Oh my gosh. That realization, because when I watched the movie I thought that they were married.
Oh,
Maybe.
I knew there was something up. I knew that.
Confused a little bit. I was kind of like, there's got to be something else here, But then when it really came to light, I mean, I was just laughing my head off.
Me too.
So back in college, I had a very similar incident happen to me.
No.
So my husband and his sister do not look anything like each other. She is a redhead. He's a brunette. And a friend of mine had invited her friend to sit with us during one of the chapel services or something like that. And the girl was like, hey, like we're just whispering back and forth. And she's like, hey, you got a boyfriend? And I'm like, oh yeah. His name is, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, can I get a picture of him? And I'm like, yeah. And I had a picture of him in my Bible. So I pulled it out and I showed it to her and she's like, oh. And she goes, okay. Hey girl, I know we just met, but I just need to let you know your boyfriend's cheating on you. And I'm like, excuse me? She's like, yeah. I see him every day at about 2:00 up here at the staircase. He's always talking to this redhead and she's like always all over him. Because she's like touching him, like, poking him, whatever. Nothing like weird, but anyways, I was like, what? And she's like, yeah. Like, girl, you just need to know this. I mean, I don't know if you know, but you gotta know this. And I'm like, redhead? his sister? And she was like, wait, what? And I said, does she look like this? Da, 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 da. And I'm like describing her, and I'm like, and she's like, yeah. And I'm like, that's his sister. I can tell you he's not cheating on me with her.
Well, at least you resolved it in a very timely manner.
Yes, it was very, very quickly. I did not call him a swine.
And neither did she.
Yes, she did not use any offensive language.
Oh, man.
It made for a very interesting time, and it makes for great family stories that embarrass a lot of people.
My mom and her brother, they hung out together all the time. They were always dancing together at school dances, so a ton of people thought that they were dating.
Mm-hmm.
It did never cause a problem with her and my dad because they didn't meet until college. But yeah,
People
that's
thought
funny.
People thought me and my brother were like, we would ride to school together, we would do all this stuff, and he would open the door for me because, you know, that's what you do and in the South. And so they're like, oh, I'm like, that's my twin brother. I'm like, and
don't
then
even.
and then we were prom king and queen together.
Oh,
So that was even more fun. So
That's funny.
oh man. Oh man. So the one,
small private school.
yeah, small private school problems. So speaking of small schools, the one storyline we have to hit on is sweet little Andy.
Oh, Andy.
And Andy, he's very, very ill, and we raised the students in Elizabeth's class have great ideas to help him out, and they decide to do the little fundraiser with the carnival and stuff, and they would to raise money for him to be able to go to the hospital. And this actually did surprise me because it's Hallmark, and usually we always have that happy ending at Hallmark, but Andy did not make it despite having, you know, the surgery and going to the hospital, and that was just so heartbreaking.
I know.
So sad.
But it brought a very important lesson to light.
Mm-hmm.
That Heavenly Father is in control, and that He does care about us, even when it seems like He doesn't.
Yes.
You know, and she took that and ran with it.
She really did.
Yeah, I love that.
Talking about how God's love is all around us. And I loved how she talked about assuming.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I love how she defined it for the students. And of course, Philip brings up, like, when you thought Uncle Wynn, like when you assumed Uncle Wynn was my pa. It's like, yep, like that.
Yes. Oh, and to wrap it all up, because we're basically at the end now, but actually, no, we're not. We have one more other thing we have to talk about, but I appreciated the fact that there were a lot of those faith elements in this movie. There was a lot of it. And after talking to Brian Bird, you could tell he wrote it.
Makes sense.
Absolutely.
You know,
and you can tell Michael Landon directed it.
Yes. It definitely had that Little House on the Prairie vibes. It had the Jeanette Oak vibes in it. It had the faith element. And there's just so many things in there that I appreciated about this movie.
The teleplay was actually Michael. So I think the story was probably, you know, Jeanette Oak's novel, and then Brian and Michael together, and then Michael did the teleplay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes. So last thing to talk about, with Elizabeth, we also find out that Wynn is actually a Mountie. And he takes her to a ball.
Mountie Ball.
The Mountie Ball.
And when he asks her, I thought my heart was going to break and fall on the floor. It was so sweet.
So sweet.
And just taking off his hat and messing with and Elizabeth, I'm sorry, Miss Thatcher. Like, that just popped out right there, sir. You know? I thought that was, and then, and then after saying you're going to be staying in a hotel, this is where I saw the tiniest bit of Lucas Bouchard. It's my intentions are nothing but proper, and I will pay your way. Yeah, so he's taking her all the way to Calgary, and he's paying for her hotel room, and he's taking her to the Mountie Ball if that costs money to get a ticket.
Right.
Yeah, so I mean, she's getting
Pulling
the
out all the
royal
stops.
treatment from this Mountie.
Yes.
You know?
And this also causes some internal conflict with Wynn that we find out a little bit later, because he's so dedicated to being a Mountie. And Lydia they have this conversation, Lydia and Elizabeth, and we could see as Wynn drives by, he's conflicted because he is falling head over heels for Elizabeth, but he knows that being a Mountie's wife is not easy. You never know where you're going to be stationed. You don't know how they're going to handle it. You don't know what kind of wilderness you're going to be in. You might be in a place where there's nobody for hundreds and hundreds of miles. And would Elizabeth be that type of person, especially somebody with her royal rich upbringing and stuff? And unfortunately, due to the circumstances, we don't get to see that play out.
I know.
You hear Edward say to Elizabeth, young Elizabeth, I read ahead.
Some Mounties do settle down.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
And we know from the books that Wynn and Elizabeth do settle down, and they do end up in the wilderness. And
she's just fine.
She is just fine. Yes.
Yeah, that was one tie-in that I really enjoyed. Elizabeth is reading, young Elizabeth is reading the diary, and she looks up at Edward and says, "Do all Mounties fear falling in love?" And Edward
like that.
goes, "Fear? No." Yeah. So that was a tie-in that I really enjoyed.
Yeah. Well, what would you guys have liked to see?
The ball.
Yeah,
the ball.
I wanted to see the ball so badly, but
and more of them together.
More
relationships.
They had good chemistry.
They really did.
And Maggie Grace.
Well, and we found out from Brian that they were more than happy to come back and finish the movie, but they were booked solid by then.
Well, Stephen Amell's the Green Arrow.
Exactly. And and so by the time they got the funds to go back to filming, that Stephen and Maggie said, yes, we'll do it, but they couldn't. They were totally booked.
Yeah,
their schedules were completely booked, and which is totally understandable, but just kind of sad.
Yeah. I would have liked to see a kiss.
I would have liked to see a kiss somewhere. We didn't get a kiss from anybody. I mean, come on.
But yeah, this movie left me wanting to go back and read the books, honestly.
Me too.
Yeah. Any other final thoughts about Wynn Calls the Heart, the movie?
It was just good, like, it made you feel good, the Christian, Bible aspects and stuff. It just, like, I like that, and just made you feel good.
I'm reminded of what Brian said to us. He said that if it hadn't had the trouble that it did, and if they hadn't been forced to rewrite the story, then there wouldn't be a series.
It really wouldn't have been a series.
No, there wouldn't have. And so
we wouldn't have young Elizabeth.
Yeah. So as incomplete as this movie feels sometimes, it's what paved the way for what we all adore.
Yes.
We would, like he said, we would not be here, the three of us, if that movie hadn't run out of funding.
Right.
I mean, that's what it boils down to.
It's crazy.
It's
so
true.
What would we be watching right now?
I know. I'm so glad that they let those trials play out. I'm so glad that they are creative, and that they had the stubbornness of the Thatcher family in them,
Yes.
that they weren't going to give up this storyline. They were going to make it work.
They handled it with courage, grace, and dignity.
Indeed.
They sure did. So, yeah, there's so much more I would have loved to see from both couples.
Mm-hmm.
But if we
wouldn't have
had
had-
seen more from both couples, we wouldn't have what we have now, which is golden for all of us.
Exactly. Yes. Such a sweet movie. If you haven't seen it, and it's interesting, a lot of people don't know that this movie exists, and they don't know that it's part kind of ish of, it's the one that propels the series, if you will. Go watch it. Take it for what it is.
You need to watch it once. You need to watch it at least once to just see it.
Yes. And just gain a little perspective of both Elizabeth and where they come from. And just
listen to the interview. If you haven't watched it yet, listen to the interview first
and then watch it.
Yes. You will marvel at every scene.
And I would also say this too. Don't compare the series and the movie. It's completely different. It's apples and oranges, completely different actors, completely different situations, circumstances. Just look at it as a story.
It's a movie.
Yeah. Look at it as a single movie.
Yeah. But yeah.
And then be grateful for the series.
Exactly.
Yes.
Alrighty, ladies. Well, we have a fun announcement to make.
Yes.
Our friends at Edify Films are letting us host a little giveaway sponsored by them. So first of all, Edify Films, they have a ton of merch. They have the series. They have the collector's editions of the DVDs. If you haven't purchased them and you want to, they also have merchandise that you can also purchase from them. And they also have cookbooks and devotionals. They have a lot of different
mugs.
I love the mugs.
Blankets.
Great for coffee, hot chocolate, cider, especially with fall weather coming up.
Yeah. So, Cammie, would you like to share a little bit about what the giveaway is?
Well, we are giving away as our first sponsored prize a combo of the When Calls the Heart coloring book and journal, so you can write all of your deepest thoughts that would be heard in a voiceover.
Channel your inner Elizabeth.
Yes, indeed.
I was going to say channel Elizabeth.
There you go.
But all you have to do is follow us on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, subscribe. We'll have more information on all of that on our social medias, where all you have to do is click a link and there it'll be. So stay tuned and watch for that. And we will give you guys, what did we say, 2 weeks?
Yes. I think so.
Okay. You all will have 2 weeks to enter. So be sure you're following us and make sure you get your entries in. And we will announce the winner then
in a podcast.
Yeah. So be sure you're listening.
Listening.
You have to keep listening.
Got to keep listening. All right. Now that we've gotten that fun news out of the way, we are going to segue into trivia. Bum, bum, bum. All right. What was the name of the class quote unquote bully?
Carl.
Yes.
Your dog's name.
Yes.
Carl.
Yes. Okay. Oh. How many kids does Abigail have?
3.
She does have 3 in this movie. All righty. The last question is, because my next question was, where was the Mountie Ball? But spoiler alert.
Whoopsie.
Share that one.
Sorry.
That's okay. What color were the words on the welcome sign to Elizabeth at Coal Valley?
Blue. I think I'm wrong.
Green?
It was green.
That was my first guess, and I second guessed myself.
Very, very good. Oh, and one more thing. I know we're basically at the end, but this quote is too good not to share. But the one thing that I forgot to mention earlier is this quote here. People who live in fear tend to do plenty of nothing except perhaps rob themselves of the possibility of joy. So let me end on this note for you all. This is by William Thatcher, who gives his pep talk to young Elizabeth. You know what? Go out and do what you are called to do. And if you need a pep talk, go back and listen to our chat with Brian Bird, because I guarantee you will be jumping up and down and you will be ready to do whatever it is that you have been tickled, called, poked, prodded to do, just like Elizabeth went out onto the prairie. Both of them.
In his words, you're going to salute.
Indeed. All right, folks, we will see you next week with our interview with Brian Bird Part 2, where we talk all about the series and he answers some fun questions for us. We also talk about some controversial topics that have happened in the last year. We talk about Daniel Lissing and his exit. We also talk about the changes in season 6 with Lori Loughlin's exit and how Brian and his team have had to go through those challenges. It gives a lot of perspective, and they are the ones that work with these folks all the time. There's no malice
in that entire situation.
They did live in that entire situation, and it was a good perspective to get, because it's a very hard time. It was a very hard time for everybody. So we did appreciate Brian sharing a little bit about that, and we hope that it helps you understand a different point of view as well. So it's really exciting. It's also really long. So charge up your computers and your phones. All righty, y'all. We will see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Hearties Hotline. For more information about the Hearties Hotline, follow us on social media at Hearties Hotline on Twitter and Instagram. We drop an episode every Wednesday, so we'll see you next week.